Now, I've already talked a bit on this program about online campaigns attacking commercial media. These aggressive, nasty and usually anonymous campaigns tend to target advertisers and bully them into dropping ads on certain programs. This is activism with the click of a mouse, slacktivism. They attack this station, and one of their main targets has been Nine Media radio star and Sky News host Alan Jones. Jones hit back last week on air, urging a boycott of one of the nation's largest retailers because it had taken its advertising elsewhere.
So my advice to Coles is get your own value system in order before you start passing judgment about other people. But don't worry, we can both play the same game. So I can tell my listeners to give Coles supermarkets and their grocerants, Coles supermarket and their petrol stations a very wide berth. This is a two-way street. We can both play the same game. It might be time I entered the ring and started playing that game. And good luck to you by the time I'm finished.
Will it work? What should media companies do? What should advertisers do? Will this get worse before it gets better? I'm joined by Daniel Lewkovitz, who's taken a keen interest in this. His company, Calamity, advertises alarm systems and security systems on the Alan Jones program. He joins me on the set now. Thanks for joining us, Daniel.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Now, tell us firstly why you decided to put your money where your mouth was. You increased your advertising with Alan Jones when he came under this sort of attack.
Well, it's very simple. I mean, politics aside, I'm trying to grow a business. And in Australia, it's not easy to run a business. And I'm an Australian-owned security business that's competing against multinationals with much deeper pockets than I have. And I wanted to advertise on the biggest station to the biggest audience, and that leaves exactly one option. It's not like I can take out advertising on the ABC, even if I wanted to, and I'm certainly paying for that as well. So I put ads on 2GB, and the ads have been okay because it is a big market and it is absolutely our demographic. And then, of course, we started getting some really, really offensive emails from people who I've never met, who certainly aren't company customers, who certainly have no skin in the game. They wouldn't care if my company disappeared tomorrow, but they're saying things like, your company supports violence against women.
This is because of the Jacinda Ardern comments where Alan Jones said someone should shove a sock down her throat, and this is what sparked the latest backlash against him. They're threatening to withdraw their custom from your business, not deal with you. They're threatening you. So how, as a business, what have you learned about this? What can you tell other businesses? How do you ascertain whether this is a serious threat against your company, whether these are real customers, whether this is a noisy minority or they represent perhaps mainstream views?
Well, this is the interesting thing, of course. There's no doubt that they want to get Alan, and there's also no doubt that that's because of his politics. I mean, if it were just simply about offending people, then Kyle Sandilands would be off the air and there'd be a similar call for boycott of him.
Not to mention half the people on the ABC with foul language and attacks against all their political opponents.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, once upon a time, the best thing a broadcaster could hope for would be to get off air having not said one of the 7 words you can't say, but now entire careers can implode in seconds because of one errant tweet or covering one sort of hot topic.
So you rightly assess it's about politics, but still, as a company, people get intimidated by the online response. They're worried it's going to hurt their business.
Right.
How do you make those judgments?
Well, this is the interesting thing. From 20 plus years in security, one of the things that you learn in security is that all organisations, and this would be a good example of one, have something called a bomb threat checklist underneath the phone. And the purpose of that is so that if someone rings in and says, there's a bomb in the building, it allows you to decide, well, do we go off air, do we shut down our business, do we evacuate, or do we go through a controlled risk assessment to determine whether this is a genuine threat or not? And businesses and government as well need to be able to do the same thing with this new form of weaponised online outrage. And one of the things that I learned very quickly is that a lot of the people who were saying things such as, we will no longer do business with your company, or we refuse to do business with you, were not actually customers. Now, even if they were, of course, in their attempt to get Alan Jones, they don't mind all the collateral damage and all the Australian businesses that get left in the wake, because that's just a means to an end. But once I realised that the emperor has no clothes. It's like the Wizard of Oz. It's this big, noisy machine out there of online outrage and hundreds of emails or whatever, but it doesn't actually translate to genuine public view. And
it's just a small number of people generating that, political activists.
Well, it's amazing what 10 people with 50 email accounts each can generate. And of course, if governments or businesses are easily spooked by this, they're not doing themselves any favours and they're not doing their real customers any favours. And an analogy I might draw would be negative reviews on businesses. There's probably not a restaurant in the country that hasn't had a bad review left by a competitor restaurant or something. It's not genuine. And as we move through to a world where everything's online and people from all around the world can now express their outrage at some tiny business somewhere in Australia, it needs to become very, very smart at learning, what's real and what's not genuine, because otherwise we're always going to be on the run and people are going to be...
bots. You could have bots doing this, basically shutting down your rivals.
Right. So one of the things that I predict is with the advances in AI and machine learning, we're going to get to a situation where software is going to be able to generate thousands of very human-sounding complaint letters, emails. And imagine being on the receiving end of that and you say something or do something or make a statement, whether you're in business or whether you're government, and then overnight you suddenly get thousands and thousands of seemingly genuine, outraged messages. We need to actually be able to work out the difference between online outrage versus actual customer or actual marketplace feeling.
Depending on your business, maybe you should only be listening to the people who actually walk through your door or ring you on the phone. Maybe all of the online feedback is to be dismissed. Could you go that far?
Well, here's the point. My company does amazing work. We save lives, we protect billions of dollars in assets. We're an Australian-owned business and we've got a lot to be proud of. But these people who are complaining, they're anti-business in many respects. Sometimes they're quite authoritarian. They're anti-freedom. They have no skin in the game whatsoever. If my business disappeared tomorrow, it would have no impact on them. So why should I listen to them? I care about my staff. I care about my customers. And we also do a lot of very good work in the community, including in respect to violence against women, protecting children, protecting community groups, ethnic groups and so forth. So why am I forced to listen to these people and appease people who will never, ever do anything for me?
Well, because some people in business get scared, especially perhaps middle-ranking executives. They see this online feedback. They're worried it's going to hurt the bottom line. They're worried that their company is going to be dragged through the mud, and so they cave in. Is that the problem?
Well, I'm very concerned about a situation where people like Jerry Harvey or Alan Jones or Clive Palmer, who have, what we'd call F-off money, can say whatever they want. But everybody else is terrified that if they commit the mortal sin of just speaking their mind freely, that they could lose their business, they could lose their reputation. People have actually been driven to self-harm because of all this online hate. And we hear all the time about social media bullying and trolling and so forth, but although I don't like to think of businesses as people, there's people who are on the receiving end of those emails, those phone calls and so forth. And this goes beyond legitimate political discourse. This is abusive, it is bullying, and it's very, very dishonest. And I think businesses need to be a lot smarter now, even though this is a new phenomena, at actually working out online opinions that matter and online opinions that don't. I mean, we've seen...
Businesses perhaps need training and to be equipped to deal with this. It's a new factor in the marketplace. As you say, it might not necessarily be driven by political operatives. Sometimes it'll be driven by your commercial competitor.
Absolutely, and with the so-called global village, people from the other side of the world can now send complaints to obscure businesses. So all you need is for some sort of anti-campaign to light up on Facebook, and all of a sudden you're on the receiving end. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you're doing the wrong thing. In many cases, it could be because you're doing exactly the right thing.
Yeah, back your judgment. Thanks so much for joining us, Daniel. Fascinating stuff. Daniel Lewkovitz there, his company is Calamity. He's fighting back against these online slacktivists. A lot of other companies are going to have to learn how to do the same.